The Royal Lexington Hotel buzzed with luxury. Crystal chandeliers sparkled. Valets rushed to open doors for guests, stepping onto the marble floors in designer attire. The air smelled of wealth and exclusivity. Then he walked in. A rugged-looking man dressed in a navy blue work jacket, faded gray flannel shirt, and sturdy work boots strode through the entrance. His dark brown hair was slightly tousled, light stubble on his jaw. A duffel bag hung over his shoulder as he calmly scanned the lobby. Conversations dipped. Eyes flickered toward him. He didn't belong here. John Carter. Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another special story for you. At the reception desk, a young concierge in a sharp black suit barely glanced at him, focused instead on a well-dressed couple. Across the room, Tim Tebow, dressed in a tailored navy blue suit, observed the shift in energy. The rugged worker approached the desk, unfazed by the whispers. The concierge finally acknowledged him, forcing a tight-lipped smile. "Sir, can I help you?" "Yeah, I have a reservation." The concierge hesitated. "Name?" The man's lips curled into a slight smirk. John Carter." The concierge tapped on the keyboard, his brows furrowing as he searched the system. A second passed, then another. A wealthy couple, a man in a tailored gray suit and a woman in a sleek red evening dress, stood nearby, waiting for their turn. The woman leaned toward her husband, whispering, "Did he say he has a reservation?" "Here," her husband chuckled. "Maybe he's lost." Across the grand lobby, guests lounged on leather armchairs, sipping expensive cocktails. Some stole glances at John, his dusty work boots, the calloused hands gripping his duffel bag, and smirked. The concierge cleared his throat. "Mr. Carter, are you sure you booked at this hotel?" John met his gaze, unbothered. "Pretty sure. Try again." The receptionist sighed, fingers typing reluctantly. At that moment, Tim Tebow, still seated at a distance, continued watching the scene unfold. His strong jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing slightly as he caught the condescending glances directed at John. The receptionist exhaled sharply. "Ah, here you are." He glanced up, still unconvinced. "You booked the royal suite?" The wealthy couple gasped. A few other guests turned their heads. John nodded, his expression unreadable. "That's right." The concierge hesitated, then forced a smile, but his tone dripped with doubt. "Of course. Let me just verify the payment method on file." More whispers rippled through the lobby. The woman in red shook her head. "No way. He must have used some kind of discount. Or maybe it's a mistake." Tim Tebow leaned forward, his hands clasped, sensing that things were about to escalate. The concierge's forced smile flickered as he scanned the screen again. He sighed, then looked back up at John, his tone still laced with condescension. "Sir, I just need to confirm the payment before we proceed." "You understand, of course." John nodded, unfazed. "Sure, go ahead." The wealthy couple, still standing nearby, smirked at each other. "Bet he used someone else's credit card," the man muttered under his breath. The woman laughed softly. "Or saved up for years just to pretend. He belongs here for a night." A young bellboy, dressed in a crisp uniform, stood behind the concierge, exchanging a glance with a fellow staff member. "I don't get it. Why would someone like him book the royal suite?" The concierge turned back to John, his skepticism poorly hidden. "Unfortunately, sir, our system has flagged your reservation for manual verification due to the unusual booking." I'll need to place a hold until management can review it. John tilted his head slightly. Is that right? The receptionist shrugged. Just standard procedure. John exhaled slowly, his expression remaining calm. He could feel the stares intensifying, the quiet murmurs around him growing louder. This wasn't the first time he had been underestimated, and he knew it wouldn't be the last. A woman in an emerald green dress leaned toward her companion at the lounge area, whispering loud enough for others to hear. I don't see why they're wasting time on him. It's obvious he doesn't belong. The tension in the lobby thickened. More guests were now taking interest, some subtly sipping their drinks, others watching with poorly concealed amusement. Tim Tebow, sitting just a few feet away, straightened in his seat. His blue eyes sharpened, his expression shifting from quiet observation to clear disapproval. Then he stood up. The tension in the hotel lobby was thick. Tim Tebow, standing tall in a navy blue blazer, stepped forward, his commanding presence silencing the room. He glanced between John, the blue-collar worker gripping his duffel bag, and the concierge, who suddenly looked uneasy. Is there a problem here? Tim's voice was firm but calm. The concierge forced a chuckle. Oh, Mr. Tebow, no issue, sir. Just verifying some details. Tim's gaze didn't waver. Verifying? Or stalling? The smirks on some guests' faces vanished. The concierge hesitated. I just wasn't expecting this reservation. Tim's expression tightened. Because he doesn't fit the image you had in mind. Silence. John exhaled, shaking his head. It's fine, Tim. I've seen this before. Tim looked at him. Doesn't mean it's right. He turned to the onlookers. The greatest people I know aren't defined by their clothes or money. It's their character. A murmur passed through the lobby. Some guests shifted uncomfortably. Tim extended his hand to John. I'm Tim. John shook it. John. Tim turned back to the concierge. Now, let's get this man checked in. Unless you want tomorrow's headlines to be about this moment. The concierge straightened. Of course, sir. The power had shifted. No one was laughing anymore. The concierge, now visibly flustered, fumbled through the computer system, typing quickly. The tension in the room remained thick as Tim Tebow stood beside John, his arms crossed in quiet authority. Ah, yes, here it is, the concierge finally muttered. A penthouse suite, booked under Mr. John Miller. A ripple of shock passed through the lobby. Penthouse suite? John, still gripping the strap of his duffel bag, gave a small nod. That's right. One of the well-dressed businessmen, who had scoffed earlier, now leaned forward in disbelief. Wait, you're staying in the penthouse? John sighed. Is that so hard to believe? Tim clapped a hand on John's shoulder. John has worked harder than most people in this room, and he deserves every bit of respect you'd give anyone else. The businessman hesitated before mumbling, I didn't realize. John exhaled, shaking his head. That's the thing. You shouldn't have to realize anything to treat someone with basic decency. The words hung in the air. A few guests exchanged guilty glances. The concierge, desperate to recover, forced a smile. Your suite is ready, sir. Let me personally escort you up. Tim smirked slightly. Good idea. John took his room key, glancing around at the once judgmental faces. He had no need to gloat. His presence alone had made the point. As he walked toward the elevators, Tim Tebow turned back to the crowd. Success isn't about what's on the outside. It's about the heart, the work, and the respect we show others. A few people nodded, others avoided his gaze. But the lesson had been learned. As the elevator doors closed behind them, John looked at Tim. "Thanks for that." Tim shrugged. "Didn't do anything special. Just reminded them what really matters." Ding. The doors opened to the top floor. As John and Tim Tebow stepped into the penthouse suite, the city skyline stretched before them through the floor-to-ceiling windows. John set his duffel bag down, exhaling slowly. "Never thought I'd ever see a view like this." Tim grinned. "You earned it, brother. Every bit of it." Back in the lobby, the weight of the moment still lingered. The businessman who had dismissed John earlier now sat in silence, staring at his untouched drink. A woman in a designer dress nudged her husband. "We were so quick to judge," she whispered. "I feel awful." The concierge, still rattled, straightened his tie. I hope Mr. Miller enjoys his stay." But even he knew his words sounded empty now. Tim glanced around the penthouse, then back at John. "You could stay at places like this all the time, you know." John shook his head, a small smile forming. "Nah, give me a good, quiet place back home, where I can sit on my porch after a long day's work. That's more my style." Tim chuckled. "And that's why you'll always have my respect." John ran a hand over his tired face, then looked at Tim sincerely. "I appreciate you standing up for me back there." Tim shrugged. "You didn't need me. You held your own just fine." John let out a quiet laugh. "Maybe. But sometimes people need to be reminded that respect isn't about wealth or status." Tim nodded. Respect isn't given. It's earned. The camera lingers on the city view one last time before fading to black. The lesson was clear. Judging someone by their appearance can lead to an embarrassing mistake. True worth isn't measured by clothes, money, or status, but by character, integrity, and hard work. If this story inspired you, take a moment to reflect. Have you ever judged too quickly? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories that challenge and inspire.